What typically was limited by what you can do with the camera, with your budget, there's none of that anymore. We're able to not only meet those ever-shrinking budgets, but we're able to give them production value that they would never be able to obtain.
Yeah. We can pretty much iterate up until picture lock.
At the end of the day, it's always going to be storytelling.
It's something that allows you to be almost 10 times or 100 times productive, and it allows you to take that creativity to the next level.
We are Topaz Labs, and this is Spotlight. AI is disrupting how video is created and experienced, and we want to tell that story as it unfolds. The real heroes of that story are the creatives and studios shaping the future of filmmaking and storytelling with AI. So we're putting them in the spotlight. Make sure to subscribe to see future episodes. If you have questions for our next guests, drop them in the comments. Enjoy the conversation.
Yeah, so my background, I started out in broadcast engineering, working on large production studios and integration and installation. And then from there, I kind of ventured into photography, commercial, high fashion, and then really spent some time refining myself as an editor. And that skill has really become valuable with Gen AI. Now, I did have a little bit of a lull with creativity for a while. I got a typical 9-to-5 and had a family. And I never thought that I would be able to be creative again. And generative AI allowed me to get back into it.
Wow.
So as an early adopter, I started with Dolly and had some fun with that. Midjourney really blew my mind.
Yeah.
But the big thing for me was working on a project with Max was a T2 remake. And that's when I really saw the potential, seeing multiple artists come from across the world and create what we kind of consider the first feature-length film with generative AI. But really, you know, the thing that I've really loved about the creativity with it, it's pushed me because there's no limits anymore. You know, what typically was limited by what you can do with the camera, with your budget, there's none of that anymore. And really, it's allowed me to constantly push. And I think the thing that I really do like about generative AI in total is the quality that we get when we're able to provide our clients. A typical production costs a lot of money. Going to location, hiring actors, etc. So we're able to not only meet those ever-shrinking budgets, but we're able to give them production value that they would never be able to obtain.
Yeah.
And one of the coolest parts too is we really like to integrate ourselves in the post-production process. And we like to actually work with the editors. So if they need an additional clip, they're able to contact us, and within minutes, they're dropping that clip into the timeline. So we're not only expediting the workflow, but we're providing a superior product with it. And really, I think for us, Starlight specifically helped us out tremendously. Our first production, or actually the first episode, we delivered about 150 clips. And I thought we were ready to move on to episode 2. What happened was they finished the rough cut and then sent it to the post house. The post house came back with over half the clips that did not meet their standards. There might have been some morphine, some softness in the faces. And we were kind of a little bit, frustrated, not knowing exactly what to do. So luckily, Starlight came through and we were able to run through and use that to utilize to create new clips, or not new clips, but to run through the upscale process and actually meet that quality control and standard that the post house had. And after that, it went to the network and passed their QC too.
Huge. Yeah. Love it.
That's such an interesting story because it mirrors something that's happening in software development right now as well. With the generative coding tools, AI coding tools like Cursor and otherwise. One often neglected part of software development is QC and QA. And now it's almost elevating it to be one of the most important parts of software development. Is there anything similar that you view the film production process as maybe before it was a little bit underemphasized that you need to change how you think about right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, before in typical production, we kind of knew that QC was locked at the time of the actual shoot, by the specific camera, making sure the exposure is right, making sure we're in focus. That was pretty straightforward. But now after going through this process, we've had to really take almost a forensic look at every clip that we deliver. And it's really kind of pushed us to make sure that the quality is there, but then also utilizing advanced upscaling has really helped us ensure that what we're delivering is going to pass. So for reference, our last episode, we just delivered. I only had 2 clips come back at about 95 clips.
Wow.
So that's a huge difference. Now we understand exactly what they're looking for. And we definitely utilize Starlight in order to create that superior product that meets their standards.
Oh, I can't wait until you use Astra. Yeah. Especially for if you don't really need to stick to a specific face like Elvis Presley or someone like that, right? The creative model will do some magic.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I definitely can't wait to test it out and see how it goes in our workflow.
Definitely.
100%.
Well, so we talked about the Gennie Studios, the genesis of it, right? To extent possible, like, or you feel comfortable, would love to like maybe pick one project, kind of, if you can share us how it was made, like just the process from start to end. I'm sure there are some elements you don't want to give your secret sauce, but I think people are just like learning about these workflows and they're just emerging everywhere. And I think it's so interesting to just listen directly from you how you do create what you create.
Yeah. We should talk about Killer Kings.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, well, you start with how we actually get going first.
This show, Killer Kings, came from this production company in the UK called FirstLookTV. And FirstLookTV was a production company that really stuck to their bread and butter, which were cost-effective true crime shows, right? That they could produce at a really, really high volume. But in order for that company to continue to grow, they realized that they needed to expand into other content genres. And a logical one for them to move into is history. The producer, a guy named Will Hanrahan, he's the co-founder and CEO of First Look. He really wanted to bring a lot of the storytelling elements from true crime into history and kind of put his own spin on it. And he conceived the show called Killer Kings, which looks at 6 formidable rulers and the crimes that they committed, mostly murder, and kind of determine like, hey, if these guys were ever put on trial, would they be convicted, right? Despite the fact that, they were real rulers and nobody would ever actually take them down. And each story is a deep dive look into the lives of these rulers and what forces around them may have influenced their motivation to commit murder. Now, when you enter the history genre versus the true crime genre, the storytelling can largely be the same, but the emphasis on high quality reenactments, the bar is much higher. Yeah. Right. With true crime, you can get away with abstract reenactments. Oh, it's a hand on a knife. It's somebody walking down a hallway kind of out of focus. Like that's all fine. In history, people really want to see what you're talking about. And in this case, with Killer Kings, having living, breathing kings was very important. So the conundrum was, how was First Look TV going to produce this show in a similar budgetary threshold as their true crime productions, but in history? And it became apparent to them that, with this new technology of AI, maybe that was a possibility to bring this show to life where it would otherwise just not be feasible to do so. So last summer, I created a spec reel for that show because Will and I have a pre-existing relationship. I used to buy true crime shows from him and showed it to him, and he was absolutely blown away by what was possible. Even though the tech wasn't where it was as of the beginning of this year, he saw the potential for where it was going. So along with his concept, he brought his reel to the network Sky History, which is basically the history channel of the UK, and sold the concept. And the show was financed. The broadcaster, the commissioner, was a little skeptical that the quality was going to be there and that it was going to meet their broadcast standards at the time. But now that we have delivered into it, he has absolutely been blown away in terms of what the capabilities are. And I think we're setting a new standard with what can be expected to see that you'll see on television.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a great segue to, the actual creative process. Yeah. We're getting down to how
the workflows and
how we cook, and the ingredients that go with that. And typically in this situation, and what a lot of people do and what we do too at times is to design the characters and then train models on them to build the boros. Yep. And that gives us that character consistency. And we'll also train models on the backgrounds, locations, and even the style. But one of the things that we found out was there's some issues with that, especially when you're mixing multiple lores together. Sometimes one weighs heavier than the other. And especially if you have two characters and you want to have that consistency across, there's issues. You can get away with it with comfy UI workflows, regional prompting, masking, etc. But for us, we're trying to balance that and then also this quick meme for the production to turn around. So we actually figured out a great way of utilizing Google Image Gen 3 and specifically Veo 2. And some cool tips, or not tips, but some tricks that we learned. We're actually able to take our single image of our character and transport them through every location that we needed via Veo 2. And that really kind of reduced the amount of time that we would normally spend in creating the videos, but then also gave us a superior product because we had that consistency across with multiple characters and locations that we had too. So by utilizing that process, it saved us a lot of time, and the end result was really, really superior than the typical way that we do production.
I also just want to emphasize that when we talk about resources, it's of course budget and time that we're able to minimize, but it's also the amount of research that we're able to do for these characters.
Yeah.
And so we are pulling,
deep research.
Exactly. And having that accessibility like that. So I just want to emphasize that like a lot of our process is in the research in order to create those characters and locations to be able to consistency. And I just don't think that that's emphasized enough right now in AI about, keeping the integrity of these historical accuracies. And I applaud them for making sure that they can stay consistent throughout each shot, because that is not an easy task.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the other thing too is, we do spend a lot of time building out those character and location prompts, finding those key tokens that give us a specific look, the way that the crown's made, the way that, the individual may have looked throughout their lives, because we're not covering in Killer King specifically one age range or one specific look with them. A lot of the episodes go from child to older adult. So we're having to figure out that progression and also keep a consistent look across all those generations or those iterations of them. So that's really an important process for us, is making sure that we're adhering to that. And then the other thing too is ethical prompting. That's something that you hear a lot in this industry. And for us, we stand by that. We make sure that we have complete transparency with the prompts that we're using. We record that whole process, and it just allows us to be completely transparent with the production company and then also with the network, because we don't have anything to hide, and we're actually doing the research and spending the time to figure out how to replicate a specific look or feel through our tokens that we're utilizing in our prompts. So that's something that we definitely, see as a very important part in our production workflow.
Was there anything, what was the most unexpected finding you had during the development of, during the production of Killer Kings that maybe you didn't expect before starting, if anything?
I don't know. I think really the one thing for me is, I'm not a history buff. So, for me, it was kind of nice to learn about.
It was a lot of fun doing the deep research on the characters. That was really enjoyable. I think one of the most interesting discoveries was just being able to kind of parlay that deep research that we really kind of fine-tuned to focus on academic and museum specific sources, and how that would effectively be aggregated into a single place, and then how that key information would be translated into prompts for the characters that would then show up in the characters that we were using with Image Gen 3, like, the look and feel of the clothing, right? And what it was made out of, and what the genetics were of some of those people and how those come through in image models. There's this king named King Herod of Judea. He's sort of this big figure in Jewish culture. And when you look back at a lot of the, artistic paintings of him, you see that, he's got a fully covered head and a big crown and a big robe, etc. But he was actually someone who was very tight with Rome. And he really liked the Roman lifestyle of like wearing a toga and wearing a diadem and a laurel crown and, things to that effect. So there are certain aspects of history that we see all the time today that are sort of idyllic, right? They're portraying an idealistic portrayal of an iconic person that is not necessarily reflective of the way they actually lived and looked. That was just a very interesting surprise. And I think for the first time in many cases, we're putting that look of some of those kings on screen in ways that movies and TV haven't really depicted them before.
Super interesting. I'm also curious about the final quality of the output, because one thing that we notice is current models often have a little bit of a sheen to it, right? You can kind of tell maybe it was AI generated, and that's still an open problem in research. Do you find that you had to work around this issue, or was it even an issue for you during the production?
Yeah, there are definitely times where we had to go back and regenerate clips. We did have to sometimes use an additional layer. So Sora kind of became a go-to for refining some of the details in it. But really when it came down to it, it came to our prompting and making sure that the process that we're following matched the exact output that we wanted. So, utilizing Starlight definitely gave us that final pass to add in fidelity and to really add in the detail that we needed. But the specific video models have different qualities about them. And specifically with Veo 2, it's very cinematic. But one of the things that we did notice was, there were shots that to us seemed like they were good. But when you compared them to a beautiful output that was a one-off, it didn't match that same quality. So running them through all the same upscale process gave them all that same fidelity, which was huge. And then another big issue that we found too was with Veo 2 and other models, it's almost like dust and scratches get put in, especially in white areas that have really blown out. And this is something that, we would kind of have to throw away and start over again. And Starlight, and thank you, Starlight, it removes all that. It's absolutely amazing. So it just really helps us not have to go back and spend more time in the production.
Yeah, it saves a lot of time. How do you see the post-production changing over like the next 3-5 years? Like the process, like the actual work that goes on, how do you see that evolving? Some would argue like, okay, that's going to be like, integrated into a generation, or a lot of opinion on it, right? Like, I'm curious to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that we've noticed is depending on what we're working on, really, let's say we're working on, historical recreation or a documentary, the production process is recording, the SMEs, the talking heads, and we really fall in line kind of in the middle of the editing process. It's a lot easier for us to have a radio edit to know exactly how much time you need to fill with generative AI.
Yeah.
And that's kind of backwards with typical, how typical production is. So I think, to your point, it's going to completely change, but it's more of an integration into one kind of flow now. It's where, there's not your typical production for the recreations, etc. It's actually happening when they're editing live. And that also gives them the ability to have more creative input with it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. We can pretty much iterate up until picture lock, because we don't have to worry about, we can't go back and shoot because we lost that location. Our permits are expired. That actor's not available. We can't bring in all these, production heads again to shoot this. If there are things that are not working in the edit, we need additional coverage. We want to shoot a scene from a different perspective. It's entirely possible up until picture lock, which is, really, really exciting. But that just means productions might have us continue to work, which is fine.
And I think a surprising factor from Killer Kings is that, we were handing in 2 minutes, and then by our last few episodes, we're giving them 6 minutes to use. And so they're utilizing more and more the AI versus, what they thought. So I think they're going to be able to find more ways to utilize AI in the editing process that they probably didn't think of before.
So you guys are the end user of tools we built and others built, right? And a lot of times you've probably seen a lot of new startups and new tools come around, and you probably experimented with, if not all, most of them, right?
As we can.
Wow. So like, it's almost like you are the end user, you're wanted to tell a creative, like a story, right? And then there are like more, startups or companies that build tools. What is a typical mistake that you see come across that companies building tools that you will end up using? You see, like they make, like the typical mistakes you've seen across?
I think one of the biggest issues that I have and this is not only for startups, but this is just in general too, is limitations. The safeguards, I understand that they have to be there, but there are some times where you want to create something that doesn't fall in that, whatever they may be protecting against. And it's very frustrating because then I'm trying to find a different tool to use, to utilize, and the look and feel may be different. So that's one issue. And I think the other thing too is really not listening to the user base and kind of focused on one typical, feature that it may be. Because there's a lot of different models that are out there. But for me, it'd be great if there was a higher level that's not solely focused on the consumer or prosumer. And I think that's one thing that's frustrating, at least on our end, because we're in this to create broadcast quality. And by not utilizing and catering to a specific group, especially a higher end, then it doesn't allow us to use a tool that may be really good. The fidelity may not be there. It may not generate enough usable seconds or whatever it may be. So I think that's one thing is, for startups, figure out exactly who your market is, but also realize that there may be a larger group of people that would use this if you had higher levels of your product.
Yeah. I would just to piggyback off that, I strongly dislike when products prioritize influencer marketing over real use cases and real companies that are in the trenches working with these tools all the time. And, specific to Matt's point, we're solving very specific production workflow problems as opposed to we've got 15,000 Twitter followers and we're just helping to kind of push the model. Like there's a time and place for that. But if you're talking about building the value proposition of your product for real world use cases, working with companies like us, should be higher on the priority list.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That was
well, I think one thing that I wanted to add to that too is, and this is a trend that I see slowly breaking, but being siloed. So you have to use this specific model or whatever it may be in this specific website. And that's really frustrating at times.
What will be an example of that?
A website to where you can train, a custom or model, but you can't download it and utilize it for
like an online creative studio.
Yeah. Gotcha. 100%. And I understand the thought behind that, but it's also not allowing the someone that may need to refine further. And you may have a usable product in the website, but I need to take it a step further. And now I'm going to have to restart my whole process again. So, next time around, I'm probably not going to go that route again.
That's also just like stifling your creativity in the process. I mean, Matt will give me a rundown of all the tools that he used per whatever. And it sounds, operationally and maybe financially a nightmare. But I'm like, use all the tools because right now it's like, why would you want to box somebody into this when there's so many tools, so many variations coming out. For me, as the chief creative officer, I don't ever want to stifle you into using any and all outputs, even though you'll stay up all night doing so.
It was a Billy Bowman post recently posted on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. It's like, people ask me, what is the best approach to AI tools? And his answer is a lot of patience and a lot of credits.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think people realize that every single project, and even sometimes subsets of tasks within a project, like a sequence, may require a bespoke workflow that isn't just available off the shelf, right? It will be a careful blending of different outputs from one tool to another in a very specific order that we may never use again, because sometimes that task is just, so challenging, or there isn't one model that will solve that one very specific problem.
Yeah, I do think there's a big difference between toys and tools. A lot of times toys will be very, very sexy, very new.
Right. Here's a fun Instagram.
Exactly.
Right.
And then tools are meant to be useful. So what do you feel like are the most overvalued and undervalued things in AI for creativity that you see right now? Yeah, overhyped, versus underappreciated. Yeah.
I think this is a hard one. I don't want to say anything.
or maybe underhyped is the easier one, right?
The power of the LLM to really help to expedite processes and reuse processes that you used before. Things like custom GPTs, gems, etc., where you can basically replicate a lot of your approaches to production, such as shot listing, right? Or creating significant character profiles and descriptions that you can use that have effectively, been fine-tuned for a way that you really, really like to work. And, projects for like Killer Kings, where we're using many different kinds of video models that all have their own little nuances, being able to use something like a custom GPT is absolutely invaluable. And if we didn't have those, it would occupy like many dozens of hours to get consistent results.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, utilizing the custom GPTs definitely saves time. But I think the cool thing with them too is it's not taking that big ticket word or the big word that you hear, agentic approach. Mm-hmm. You're still having that human interaction with it. And I think agentic approach is definitely going to be the future of what we do in a way. I mean, automation's going to be something that's prevalent, especially in generative AI, the industry. But I still believe that having that human interaction and creativity is going to be extremely important, no matter what, until we get to singularity, which is coming closer and closer. That creative, synergistic relationship that happens is going to be really important. And, for people that are kind of on the fence about generative AI and using AI in general, it's something that allows you to be almost 10 times or 100 times productive, and it allows you to take that creativity to the next level. Something that you didn't think was possible is now, possible within a few minutes. So
shifting gear to what's coming up, like your vision of what the future look like. So I'll start with Gennie Studios. Like, where do you see Gennie Studios 3-5 years from now?
Yeah, we will be a fully operational and self-sustaining studio. A big part of our focus is to build our own content destinations, things like YouTube channels, to build content from the ground up that are backed into price points that allow them to be, really self-sustaining. That's going to be a big part of it. We're also moving away from just doing, work for other companies, but actually building new productions and formats collaboratively with third-party producers and building shows and IP from the ground up.
Yeah, 100%. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not quite losing shot. That's good.
What do you feel like is the biggest uncertainty for you at Gennie right now? So everything's moving so fast. All the tools are moving so fast, but there's also a lot of backlash against some of these tools, and there's uncertainty everywhere. Nobody really knows what's going to happen. Yeah. Is there anything specific that, if you could just snap your fingers and have answered for you that would clear up a lot of things, or that would make what you're planning on doing easier?
Yeah, I mean, and this is a big ask, but there are some models out there that are really, really good, but I don't know what they're trained on. And having some transparency and, some ability to offer the end user some sort of protection would be huge. Not only would that help with getting, studios on board, but it would also help with what tools we utilize, because we're very careful depending on what the project and where the end result's going to be. So having that transparency would be huge, 100%. But I think the other thing that's kind of interesting too, and at least in my mind, is knowing that Midjourney, you can talk to it now. You can iterate on the fly. Well, that's one step closer to having automation. Yeah. So in my mind, I'm knowing that these tools are becoming cheaper and easier to use. So in my mind, I'm trying to think, okay, how do we stay one step ahead of everyone else? And, I think our transparency, our ability to meet these broadcast standards and being ethical, is huge, but also staying current and thinking about, 3 years ahead. Is there going to be a new medium that no one's thought of yet? How do we create interactivity for the individual user, or customization on the fly? Trying to think about the next step or progression of what we hear, and always staying ahead of the curve is kind of, the main area of focus in my about.
So there's one question I'm asking all the studios. I wanted to ask all the studios this one question, right? So this question is asked a lot from tool builders, but not enough from tool users. So if you look at content like, let's say, the Marvel Avengers, or like the blockbuster movie, or hit TV series like The White Lotus, right? In your view, how far are we from creating that through AI?
I think it's entirely possible, but it's not because of the tools. It's about building a really strong relationship with the audience and creating characters that people actually care about, right? I think that, what has made, Marvel so successful is building a strong relationship with characters, over time, creating a very good sense of drama, setups, payoffs, etc. And same thing, with The White Lotus. Like Mike White is like an absolutely brilliant storyteller, and creating characters and scenarios and suspense that you really, really get invested in. And there are things that have happened on TikTok, right? Where a woman is talking about this crazy romantic fling, that she talks over, many iterations of stories, each like a minute each. That can draw as large an audience as something like The White Lotus, with a decimal point or a decimal fraction of the production value of The White Lotus, and bring that. So it's not about how good things look. It's about how good the story is. Yeah. And between the democratization of distribution because of YouTube, and now a further democratization of production value, anybody can seize upon the ability to capture that much of an audience.
I think that helps me sleep at night too. And, you think, all these people are joining AI. We need to do this, do that. And it's like, at the end of the day, it's always going to be storytelling. And that's why we have storytellers from traditional. And, everybody that we work with has vast backgrounds in specifically storytelling, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to be your moat.
Yeah, people want to hear stories from other people.
Well, if you are a documentary or nonfiction producer, whether in the traditional world or from the world of, content creation for social media or YouTube, and you really want to wrap your arms around generative AI to help tell your story or the stories that you care about, do not hesitate to reach out to us. Additionally, if you are a technology company, such as our friends at Topaz, we would be absolutely delighted to work with you on figuring out the best ways to use your product so that we can help with further case studies.
Awesome. And what is the best way for people to see your work or follow you, Twitter or other channels? We can probably add the links in the...
We've just started our Substack newsletter, which, can be sent right to your inboxes. You can sign up for that through our website. Add that functionality. Like today. But certainly just go to our website. We have a button that says book a demo. You will literally have these individuals on this couch on the call with you. If you want to, work with us to have Gennie produce content for you, or if you want us to try out your technology product, we're all ears.
Yeah, 100%. And don't forget, we're airing on Sky History. So on the television too, you'll be able to see Gennie and what we do too. So it's very exciting.
That's right. June 16th, Sky History. If you live in the UK or Europe, you'll be able to watch it. Hopefully soon here in the US.
I feel like I've known you guys for a while, had a few calls, but getting to meet them in person. So Max was the one who connected us with Mike, who's organizing the event. So,
okay, great.
Yeah. It seems like, very like, when I started getting to know some of the studios, people know each other. We had Grail Studios here, who was introduced to us by with Rory Flynn.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So like, I feel like maybe it's like go outside of this like 50 companies and a few hundred people. It's like everybody knows each other.
Very much so. It's a very close-knit community.
Yeah. And I was telling, like, look, when YouTube came around, people are like, it's a bunch of cat videos. Like, same thing with TikTok, right? I remember, like, it's a bunch of teenage girls dancing.
Right.
But then, like, there's few individuals come around, like Mr. Beast, like, these TikTokers, like, they just changed the game.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure, like, there's already a Mr. Beast among all of you guys, right? Like, there's just so many of them. And I think it's interesting to see that.
Well, when we think about, honestly, this is Chelsea's world. Like, Mr. Beast is the household name that everybody sort of recognizes, but the power comes from the creators that are super serving a very specific subset of an audience. So one of Chelsea's clients is a zoologist, and she does these amazing videos about the history of life on Earth. And she's doing the history of cats right now. Her name's Lindsay Nicole. She's great. And I think that Gennie's a really good comp to that, right? You'll have people that are making all the big noise like Promise and, folks like them, but we're really laser focused on a very specific kind of storytelling and use case, and we're providing so much value to the people that care about those kinds of stories, both producers and audience.
So when we launched Starlight, like one thing that made things much easier for us, and we were like discussing on stuff, but like let's just like work with this like few number of creators, but listen to them and we just try to give them the tools they need. Like even the Starlight, like we were not really aiming at AI video using cases. It was like restoration, and we just like shipped it out very fast. And then we started seeing this like pockets of excitement. And then I talked to you guys.
Yeah.
And then every time like we learn new things. So Astra is kind of like the evolution that kind of led from this conversation led to that. Also, yeah, fun. Yeah. You guys will probably start playing with it next week.
Sweet. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, one request for Starlight.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, not on the website, but through video AI, can I bulk upload?
Yeah.
Not select specific regions. Like it would be so great if I could throw 50 clips at it. And I know it's happened everything, but
that processing.
Yeah.
We can definitely do that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
We're probably gonna have 150 shots for this thing that we're working on right now, at least.
Same request came from Jonathan Dor, the Dor brothers.
Oh yeah.
Some of a lot of these things actually doesn't matter.
But yeah,
I think it was you guys or someone else was like very articulate on not changing the name of the file.
That was that's right.
Well, do you guys understand why that's important?
Yeah. And not only you guys, like we keep hearing that. It's like, we hear you.
Yeah.
And you guys also, I remember, had a very particular view on how we show you the queuing videos. Yeah. The details you want to see.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So like, it's not only the models, the little details, like
It's the logistics.
Yeah.
and it stacks up. I remember like first we launched Starlight, like the history was a kind of like a chat interface. And then we switched it because of those things keep coming up.
Yeah.
So we'll do the same thing. We'll just like, focus on people who are like pushing the boundaries. Yeah, sure.
Appreciate that. True. I guess one last request is if you're natively or automatically have the ability to convert over to ProRes, that'd be huge. Because that would save me a process too.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that hard to convert it over.
I mean, best that's done now is what, H.264?
Well, it comes out in H.264 and then I have to rerun it.
This is for Starlight specifically, right?
Well, yeah, it's specifically Starlight.
No, I mean, this is how we should be building the product. I think gotta listen to.
Not screaming and begging, but with certain tools, we are asking to have even FaceTime with them, and I want to keep everything secret and it's just not going to be the way of how you interact.
I mean, the honor is ours for y'all using it and finding it useful enough to actually give us this feedback. So I really appreciate it.
No, totally.
Yeah, it's been great.
Honest with you, I mean, you guys are one of the reasons why we're actually going to broadcast with.
True.
I think the first, documentary with AI recreation in it.
That's amazing. Did we get that? Say that again. No, that's really great to hear. Yeah.
All right, guys.
All right. Cool. Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching this episode of Spotlight. We got more creators, more stories, and more episodes coming, so make sure to subscribe. If you have questions for our next guests, drop them in the comments. We would love to include you in our future conversations. See you in our next episode.